Awesome, guys. This next speaker comes all the way from Brazil. She's going to do a talk on token engineering stakeholder analysis. She's going to talk about the early findings of that. So it's not all the findings, just the early findings, I'm afraid. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your next speaker, Livia Deschermayer.
Thank you. Is this the slide? Okay, great. It was difficult for me to feel connected preparing for this presentation. I've been wanting to connect with very small and grounded things. I've been wanting to be in the body, to connect with the micro, the tangible, the possible. The abstraction has been putting us all in the clouds when there hasn't been a moment we need more to be grounded on planet Earth. There is something real calling. The necessity to look at interactions as the most precious thing, not only with humans, but with everything there is. I see economics as this huge map of interactions. Every transaction is a statement of value being exchanged. Currently, there is so much value still traveling the invisible. It's like we are looking at a map of the year 100. We're still interacting mainly with extractive value systems from colonial cultures, but there is an unmapped reality that will allow us to see so much further. 2011 movements like Occupy Wall Street, the Arab Spring, and the Indignados movement in Spain emerged from a global financial crisis. The root of dissatisfaction were in socioeconomic constraints that prevent people from feeling free and living meaningful lives. The problem is that people had no means for proposing economic reforms that could structurally change their environments. On Monday, we went on a walk organized by the Trusted Seed with a co-op movement leader in the neighborhood of Sants here in Barcelona. I was surprised to hear such successful stories of collective social achievement. And yet, he said, it's exhausting to fight the big capital. It is indeed. Capitalism is a lose-lose game. We have a lot to learn with such spaces and agents of impact and resistance. And we also have something to share. We start to have means for economic transformation that can change the course of humanity. And perhaps, for the first time, we're seeing tangible potential for transferring economic authority from centralized giants to individuals and mission-driven communities. Token engineering is a nascent transdisciplinary movement concerned with the creation of token-based socioeconomic systems. And I'm here today to present this stakeholder study that was born out of the need to understand better what token engineering entails and what are the challenges and needs faced by practitioners in order to advance the field so real impact can come from cryptocurrencies in safe and ethical ways. The study is funded by the Token Engineering Commons, and it was a collective effort since its inception to this moment where I'll share some of our early findings. The primary research question guiding the study was, what is token engineering? We recruited participants who identified themselves, who our team identified, and who were recommended by other participants as token engineers or working on the field of token engineering. And overall, we interviewed 41 individuals based all over the world. This is a map. I don't know if you can see well because it's light colored, but that is the map of where our participants are coming from, so quite spread. with various backgrounds and all contributing to the space. So the design of the study was rooted in a constructive, grounded theory approach, which focuses on exploring new and emergent phenomena. We asked questions about participants' career journeys, how they see the field, the definition of token engineering for them, and asked specific questions about ethics, diversity, finances, and AI. So the social researchers, myself included, 3 of us analyzed the data set using a constant comparative method. So while we continue to make sense of the data we found, we also want to share a few of the key findings emerging from this work. Big E engineering. One of our participants spoke about big E engineering versus little e engineering. He argued token engineering falls under the big E engineering umbrella, which has certain kinds of processes, values, and ethics baked into it, in counterpart to little e engineering from software engineering, which is more experimental and it isn't so concerned with such standards. Many of our participants endorsed the term engineering when talking about token engineering. So we asked if token engineering was even an accurate term. And a lot of people felt very connected to the engineering aspect of it because it brings a tradition of ethics and safety when dealing with public infrastructure. So some of the quotes we had was that, for me, token engineering was a selling point in the ethics space, not a new technical field. The extent to which we work on designing the automated procedures entrenched within our emerging organization is awesome, but token engineering, in my opinion, exists to bring attention to those ethics and those sort of, design and validation practices that undergird public infrastructure and other sectors of Web3. Someone else said, my understanding of engineering is that there is a code of ethics, and also that token engineering has 4 pillars: economic engineering, technical engineering, legal engineering, and ethical or political engineering, because politics is ethics. Build bridges for everyone. This was an interesting story that came up. One of our participants shared that when inquired about diversity and inclusivity, that there was a bridge that was built in New York City in the 60s, and engineers were lobbied to make this bridge lower so buses couldn't cross the bridge, because it was a rich area, a rich beach, that they didn't want lower class accessing that space. So they created an engineering impediment to an actual bridge. So the name engineering is not enough to bring ethics to the space and to ensure that that will happen, but we need to bring diversity to make sure that voices are represented and they can mitigate this type of situation. So discrimination is not baked in design. So a segue to that is one of our participants from Nigeria shared how he thinks most crypto systems are still being crafted for Europe and North America instead of looking at the top 20 countries that use crypto the most. He argues that necessity can bring creativity, and that is his quote, that people need to realize that in several other places, this crypto movement is beyond the means of livelihood. It's a religion, it's a movement, it's a mindset, it's a do or die. In fact, it is that it has to work, right? So when you're dealing with people like that are willing to go the farthest, to prove their points, to do their research, to do the due diligence, they often come up with the quickest, bright enough ideas that you probably were not thinking about. jumping from that into legality and regulation, that was probably the #1 need, challenge, concern mentioned in the interviews. So these are some of the quotes of how worried that people were feeling about regulations, that if people were getting more and more worried about the existence of tokens, the tokens being available to users, then that's going to be a huge risk. What keeps me up at night right now, which is a very significant thing, is the whole anti-token sentiment by the regulators. I think that is somewhat unspoken or underappreciated, the impact of the regulation on the decay of the industry. The lawyers just follow what the regulators state. I think a more interesting thing is to work with lobbying groups to lobby for pro-token legislation. And I put this slide after the last quote I just mentioned because that same participant had a provocation that how projects worried about regulation are mostly focused on European and North American regulations, but the top 20 countries that have the biggest crypto users might not be in those states where regulations are so tight. So what if there is a demand for real use cases in more flexible jurisdictions? How can we shift our attention to build for people that really need what we're building? Also, token engineering is a highly multidisciplinary space. Our data set highlighted varying degrees of identification with different roles within the field, suggesting a diverse range of responsibilities and expertise, and implying that more than a token engineering role, we are talking about a token engineering team. So this cryptoeconomic flower was mentioned a lot, and it has been around for a long time, and it was still quite representative of the expertises that we heard from participants. But I think there is a few more to add when we go deeper in the research. And one of them was cybernetics, that appeared a lot, and it's not represented here. And also communication, how people really feel the need for communication to happen, from like translating complexity topics to clients, for clients to understand better how to talk to token engineers, and just for education in general. So the multidisciplinarity hints to a role of token engineer, because it was very difficult to ping what is a token engineer. Can we even say that this is a role? So some of the quotes around that is that if you take in any engineering field, the set of people actually exercising an engineer role tends to be small compared to what engineering represents. And this next quote summarizes an interesting point, that is, analog verification isn't as common of a thing anymore. Isn't a common of a thing yet in token engineering. And that's actually where a lot of the problems still exist, right? Many hacks that we've seen in the last year and a half, or DeFi type hacks, where it's about exploiting incentives. So what he's talking about here is basically what we're calling a system auditor. That is a person that would have the liability about the system they are building. So who is responsible for the design of a token system? Is this person an engineer? In traditional engineering roles, the engineer is the person who is liable for the process they are creating. So we've been exploring this finding of a system auditor as someone that could say that they did the token engineering for the process. And one last finding I want to highlight is education. So how difficult it is to build educational materials in such a fast-moving space. that is multidisciplinary, that has so many areas of knowledge and expertise that are constantly changing because everything is changing so fast. With that comes a need for standardization, for provenance. There's so many things that could contribute to education being more profound in token engineering. And I want to give a highlight to Token Engineering Academy. That is, here's their logo. They created the first bachelor level course of token engineering that is available for free. And it's still not enough, but it's so much work, and it's such a Herculean work. And I want to give a shout out to Angela, who has been providing a lot of this education for years for token engineers. So if you want to study token engineering, please go to Token Engineering Academy and start your bachelor level course, and also feel inspired to start looking at other resources for token engineering education. Education of the space, education of the people, education primarily, to look beyond token as a financial tool. We need to have educational ground if we want to go beyond DeFi and if we want to build the societies that we dream of. It's a fast-moving field that is definitely on the frontier of human knowledge, and this highlights how it changes so much and how challenging that is. And having a library of knowledge. What's the best resources for token engineering? Is there a library of models like standard models? Is there a library of documentation about what a math spec is and how to build one or how to write one for a mechanism that you're designing? This is just, some of the early findings of our analysis, and we still have a lot to share around challenges and needs, practices, areas of knowledge, contradiction, some golden nuggets that came out of this research, and open questions. We want to engage a lot the community on discussing some of the points that came up, because this is so important for the crypto space in general, not only for the discipline of token engineering. So if you scan this QR code, you're going to see what are the opportunities to engage with us and sign up for our report when it comes up. And I wanted to finish by sharing this that I mentioned in the beginning, how it feels like what we're seeing now in terms of a value being mapped is almost as if the world map still look like this, which is Ptolemy's world map from the year 150, where, like, what is even there of what we know of the world today? Maybe something like North Africa, Europe. It's so unrecognizable. So imagine the shift in human awareness once the real size of the world started to be understood. We'll have a completely different image of the future and the potential of our interactions once crypto economies start to put more value on our maps of meaning. We'll start to have a bigger picture of what is to interact, of what is beyond capitalism, and how we can create regenerative space for us to live in. Thank you so much, everyone.